There is a number, a secret figure attached to you the moment you are born on American soil. It is not your social security number. It is not a blessing. It is a bill. This number is $105,820. This is your share. It is the invisible invoice, the birth tax placed in your name before you can even speak. It represents your tiny, individual slice of the largest financial figure in human history, the $38 trillion United States national debt. This $38 trillion figure is so vast it has become abstract. It is a number used by politicians to incite fear, by news anchors to signal crisis, and by the average person to express a vague sense of impending doom. We are told this number is a mark of failure, a sign of recklessness, a generational crime. But here is the paradox. Here is the secret. That $38 trillion debt is not a failure of the system. It is the system. The figure isn't a burden on the architecture of the modern world. It is the architecture. Every war, every crisis, every boom, and every bust sits on top of this invisible scaffolding of IOUS. And if you follow the chain of creditors long enough, you discover something unsettling. The world doesn't truly owe this money to anyone in particular. It owes it to itself. To understand how we reached this point, you must ignore the politicians. The screaming heads on television are selling an illusion. The real goal isn't to eliminate the debt. The goal is to keep the machine running. This is not a story about budgets or political parties. This is a story about money, power, and the great confidence game that holds the 21st century together. The architecture of a blessing. To understand the $38 trillion, you must first go back to the beginning. Not to the 2008 crash, not to the Reagan deficits, but to the very birth of the United States. When the new nation was formed, it was bankrupt, drowning in debt from the Revolutionary War. The states were divided, the currency worthless. The conventional wisdom, led by men like Thomas Jefferson, was to pay this debt off, erase the stain, and return to a simple agrarian society. But one man saw things differently. Alexander Hamilton, the first Treasury Secretary, proposed a radical, almost heretical idea. He argued that the government should not pay off its debts, but consolidate them. He would create a new, permanent national debt. His insight was this: a national debt, if properly managed, is a national blessing. Hamilton understood power. He knew that by issuing government bonds, promises to pay interest backed by future taxes, he wasn't just raising money. He was creating a new asset. He was forging a chain. By selling these bonds, he bound the new nation's wealthy merchant class to the nation's survival. If you owned a government bond, you needed the government to succeed so you could get your interest payment. Your personal wealth was now tied directly to the stability of the state. This was the revolutionary moment. Debt was transformed. It was no longer a simple liability, a mark of failure. It had become a financial instrument. It was a promise that could be traded, bought, and sold. It was the birth of the modern financial system. That $105,820 bill in your name is the direct descendant of Hamilton's architecture. It is not debt in the way you have a car loan or a mortgage. It is the primary collateral of the global economy. The creditor in the mirror. Here is the central paradox. If the United States owes $38 trillion, who exactly is the creditor? Who holds the other end of the rope? When politicians speak of our debt, they conjure images of shadowy foreign powers. They warn that we are in debt to China. This is a useful illusion. Let's follow the money. That $38 trillion is split into two categories. The first part is intragovernmental holdings. This is roughly $7 trillion. This is money the government owes to itself. It is an accounting trick. The Social Security Trust Fund, for example, collected more in taxes than it paid out for decades. By law, it used that surplus to buy treasury bonds. It is a stack of IOUs from one part of the government to another. This is not debt. It's a political promise, a line on a balance sheet. The real story is the second category, debt held by the public. This is the $31 trillion that is bought, sold, and traded in the global marketplace. This is the real debt. So, who owns it? Is it China? Japan? Japan is the top foreign holder, with roughly $1.1 trillion. China follows, holding around $800 billion. Yes, these are enormous sums. But together, they account for less than 6% of the total. The idea that China owns America is a fiction. In fact, those nations are hostages to our system. They must park their vast trade surpluses somewhere, and the only market deep, liquid, and safe enough is the U.S. Treasury market. If they were to sell those bonds, the value of the dollar would collapse, and so would the value of their own reserves. It is a financial balance of terror. So, who holds the rest? The shocking truth is, we do. Roughly 2/3 of the publicly held debt is owned by Americans. It is held by American banks, pension funds, mutual funds, insurance companies, and individual investors. Your 401k is a creditor. Your retirement account is built on the promise of government debt. The bank that holds your mortgage? It uses treasury bonds as its primary risk-free collateral. The insurance company that covers your car? Its entire business model rests on a foundation of government IOUs. You are not just the debtor, you are also the creditor. Your savings depend on the debt's existence. But the largest and most powerful creditor is the one we never talk about: the Federal Reserve. America's central bank doesn't just manage the system, it manufactures it. Through a process called open market operations, the Fed buys government bonds. But it doesn't use tax money. It buys them by creating new money in exchange. The liability of one balance sheet, the Treasury's bond, becomes the asset of another, the Fed's, with a few keystrokes. The central bank is the ultimate market maker, the high priest of this system, ensuring there is always a buyer, always liquidity. So when you ask, who is the creditor? The answer is unsettling. Look in the mirror. The creditor is the U.S. financial system itself. It is a closed loop of trust. The policy of forever. This brings us to the second great illusion, that the debt will ever be paid back. When you or I take out a loan, we are expected to repay the principal. We save, we sacrifice, we pay it down. This is the reality for households and small businesses. Governments do not operate this way. The United States government has no plan to pay off its $38 trillion debt. Not now. Not ever. That is not a conspiracy. It is policy. The debt is not designed to be repaid. It is designed to be rolled over. This is the most important concept in modern finance. It's called refinancing. When a $100 billion in Treasury bonds matures, when the IOU comes due, the Treasury Department does not use $100 billion from taxes to pay it off. Instead, it simply issues $100 billion in new bonds to pay off the old ones. The debt is permanent. It is a rolling, perpetual subscription. The real product isn't the principal, it's the interest. The interest is the rent, that the world pays to the United States for providing stability. The exorbitant privilege of the US dollar means that our country can borrow in the same currency it prints. We are the only nation that can never, in theory, default on its debt because we can always print the money to pay the interest. This is why the US Treasury bond is considered the safest collateral in existence. It is the bedrock. It is the risk-free asset upon which every other financial product, every stock, every mortgage, every corporate bond is measured. In the 21st century, debt is money. And this is the true secret. The system depends on the government never paying back the debt. If Washington somehow decided to pay down every dollar, it would have to run a budget surplus so massive it would trigger a global depression. It would withdraw the world's most trusted financial instrument. Banks would fail. Markets would collapse. The $38 trillion debt isn't a problem for the system. It is the fuel for it. The price of the machine. So, if the debt is never paid back, why does it matter? Why is that $105,820 bill in your name? It matters because the interest is real. The burden on you is not the principal. The burden is the service. Every year, the US government must pay interest on that $38 trillion. This year, that interest payment will be over $870 billion. Within a few years, it will be the single largest item in the federal budget, more than the military, more than Social Security, more than Medicare. And where does that $870 billion come from? It comes from you. It comes from your income taxes. It is the slice of your labor that is transferred, not to build roads or schools, but to service the machine. This is the great transfer. The video was right. Debt is not just a transfer between countries. It is a transfer between classes. Your tax dollars flow to the Treasury, which then pays them out as interest. And who receives that interest? The creditors, the banks, the pension funds, the corporations, the wealthy individuals, and the foreign governments who own the debt. Taxes flow from the workers, and interest flows to the owners. The system rewards those who own the debt and punishes, taxes, those who merely pay it. This is the invisible engine driving inequality. The $105,820 isn't a debt you will ever pay off. It is a measure of the lifetime of interest payments you will make to sustain the assets of the creditor class. The confidence game. We are now trapped in the machine we built. The US economy, the global economy, is like a shark. It must keep moving, keep growing, to breathe, and it must keep borrowing to grow. The $38 trillion number is not the danger. The danger is when the confidence wavers. This entire global pyramid, this game of rolling promises, runs on one single intangible thing: belief. The belief that the US government will always be able to pay the interest. The belief that the US dollar will always be the world's reserve currency. But what happens when the promises, new debt, grow faster than the engine? The real economy. What happens when the interest payments become so large that they choke off all other government functions? You see it in miniature in other countries. When Greece's debt became unpayable, bondholders panicked, yields spiked, and the European Central Bank intervened. Not with a rescue, but with austerity. The price of the bailout was the sacrifice of an entire generation. When confidence fades, the numbers stop mattering. Interest rates spike. The cost to roll over the debt explodes. The economy, built entirely on rolling promises, grinds to a halt. That $105,820 figure on your head? It is not a bill. It is your entry fee into the greatest confidence game ever devised. You are a participant in a closed loop of trust, a system that must borrow forever to survive. The real secret of the $38 trillion debt isn't how we will pay it back. The secret is that we can't. The real question is, how long can we keep the world believing we will?